speech, Peter Fortune.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I say I've learnt from the potential misstep for the Honourable Member from Sheffield South East, and I promise to gaze at you throughout my entire speech. A maiden speech, Madam Deputy Speaker, is by tradition and design supposed to be quite light-hearted, and that is how I have fashioned this. But I want the House to be in no doubt that this is a very serious issue, and I welcome the cross-party conversation that's been had about the disaster at Grenfell. And I know that my constituents in Bromley and Biggin Hill send their thoughts and their prayers to the victims, survivors and their families, and for those that have been impacted elsewhere. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is obvious that I represent the finest constituency in all of this great United Kingdom. Before I set out my case, let me say a few words about my main predecessor, noting, of course, those communities we welcome from the constituencies of both Beckenham and Orpington. But the majority of my new constituency is inherited from Bromley and Chislehurst and Sir Bob Neill, KC. Sir Bob was and is a creature of this House, a magnificent speaker, bon vivant and good friend to many in this chamber. Bob dedicated his adult life to service. He started as a councillor before moving to the Greater London Council. The GLC, of course, met its demise in 1986. Bob, unperturbed, simply hung around till it was reinvented in 2000 when he became the first Assembly member for Bexley and Bromley. In 2006, with the passing of the much-loved awkward squad member Eric Forth, Bob fought a difficult by-election to become the member for Bromley and Chislehurst. For nearly a quarter of a century, Bob has been part of the fabric of our community, always ready to fight for those who needed a voice. Bob has a deep admiration and love for the law. Of the many positions he's held in politics, I believe it is chairman of the Justice Select Committee where he reached his pinnacle. His knowledge and depth of understanding has been of unquestionable benefit to the House, but his love of the law is trumped by a love that is much deeper. It's not West Ham, it's not opera, it's not even Gibraltar, to which I know he's given so much time. His greatest love is for Anne Louise, the woman, the wife, and the friend who's made him so happy. And members will know that fate took a particularly callous decision early on in their new relationship. But they will know that Bob and Anne Louise faced that challenge with their typical resilience and humour. I thank him for his service, for the graciousness and kindness with which he has always treated me, and I wish his family well. Yeah. Before I move on to making the self-evident case that Bromley and Biggin Hill is the greatest constituency that has ever existed ever, I want to make a note of another previous member for Bromley, the former Prime Minister Harold Macmillan. As Minister for Housing, he took on the responsibility of meeting new and ambitious housing targets. He was not keen at first, writing in his diary in 1951 that it was not my cup of tea at all. Despite his concerns, he met the inflated target a year early and changed the lives of families right across the country by presenting the opportunity to live in a safe and secure home. I wonder how he would feel now, and this does link to the substance of the debate, that residents of North Point in Bromley are still suffering due to a cladding crisis that is of no fault of their own. This is an injustice that has gone on for too long, and it is vital that the whole House works together to free those impacted from the imposed shackles of poor governance and a lack of accountability. Before moving on to talk further about the constituency, I would like to say thank you to the best people I know. I cannot linger here for too long, otherwise I shall be reduced to an emotional puddle. But I must recognise my beautiful family, without whom I am nothing. My extraordinary children make me so proud, and I am blessed with the most beautiful, talented, funny, and patient wife in Anna Marie. She is the most wonderful and kindest person I have ever met. I will never be good enough for her, but I will keep trying. To business. Bromley and Biggin Hill is a long, thin, an elegant constituency. Which is why it comes as no surprise that they chose me. An uncanny physical manifestation of the place. And it is a wonderful place. Sundridge, Bickley, Hayes and Keston, the bit of Darwin that's in the family, along with Coney Hall, Bromley Common, Biggin Hill, and of course, the ancient market town of Bromley. Now, rather than a specific geographical tour, I'll demonstrate the amazing contributions from across Bromley and Biggin Hill in the fields of literature, sports, science, politics, and also how we saved the world. Let's start with literature. If you've enjoyed exciting stories of time travel or invisible men, if you've secretly encouraged William, the unruly schoolboy, or empathised with the Buddha of suburbia, you've been enjoying a writer from Bromley and Biggin Hill. H.G. Wells, Richmal Crompton and Hanif Qureshi are all connected to the constituency. Enid Blyton was one of the first teachers at Bickley Park School, and academic writers and thinkers like Sir Anthony Selden have spent time scribbling in the constituency. But perhaps the greatest intellectual offering came as a pre-ironic criticism of consumerism and a reflection of the UK's struggling agricultural base, all expressed in musical form. Produced by an epoch-defining philosophical movement from the 70s, the song went, spam, 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 lovely spam, and was set in the fictional Green Midget Cafe in Bromley. Now a pub quiz question for the sports round. Who can tell me the only English Football League club with a Conservative MP? That's right. It is the mighty Bromley FC, recently promoted and going great guns, clearly due to the sound political stewardship of the constituency. And I look forward to chants of, "You've got the only Tory," from opposition benches when we take on Notts County at Hayes Lane later this week. We have also added to the canon scientific. In 1843, Thomas John Hussey, the rector of Hayes, noticed anomalies in the orbit of the recently discovered planet Uranus. He wrote to the future Astronomer Royal and talked of the possibility of some disturbing body beyond Uranus. You're making your own jokes up. Stop it. This led to further investigation and discovery, ultimately contributing to the modern understanding of the solar system. What I am saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that we invented Neptune. To politics. And whilst we've had our fair share of lefty types, notably anarcho-communist Peter Kropotkin, who lived with us for a bit, I have to say my favourite local communist has always been Coney Hall's irrepressible Elsie Borders, who led the famous mortgage strike of 1937. Elsie intentionally defaulted on mortgage payments, demanding that the structural flaws in their newly acquired buildings be repaired. I cannot think but help how this relates to the substantive issue we are debating. And whilst I have some opposition members on side, I can delight them further by informing them that it was in Bromley and Biggin Hill that we invented the modern income tax. But before I lose members on this side, allow me to win them back by explaining that the revenue raised was used to fight the French. I got them back. It was introduced by our local boy done good William Pitt the Younger, who was born and resided in the constituency. He was assisted into this political position by his father, William Pitt the Elder, another resident. This original political Nepo baby went on to have an extraordinary career, with perhaps the highlight being the conversations he held with his colleague William Wilberforce around a tree in the grounds of the Pitt residence. A Wilberforce diary entry in 1788 reads, "At length, I will remember, after a conversation with Mr. Pitt, in the open air at the root of an old tree of Holwood, just above the steep descent into the Vale of Keston, I resolved to give notice, on a fit occasion in the House of Commons, of my intention to bring forward the abolition of the slave trade." Evidence that we in this House do occasionally get something right. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to turn my attention to the wonderful town of Biggin Hill. It is more Kent than London, with its rolling green hills and rural lifestyle. But Biggin Hill has given us so much more. I urge members to visit the wonderful Biggin Hill Museum and Chapel and hear the stories of the few. To imagine those young men strapping into their Spitfires and Hurricanes, accelerating down the runway at Biggin Hill, gently pulling back on the stick and gliding free from the bonds of earth. The cognitive dissonance that must have arisen from the exhilaration of floating in the blue Kentish sky and the terror of the strife awaiting them as they cross a freezing channel. This Sunday, September 15th, is Battle of Britain Day, and we remember the service and sacrifice of those who gave their lives so that we can stand in this place and debate the issues of the day, both safe and free. Yeah. They delivered this freedom with a bravery and selflessness that I can never begin to repay. As the member for Bromley and Biggin Hill, I recognise the honour and responsibility to forever remember them. And I know that the privilege I have to serve the whole of the constituency was delivered by the sacrifice of those who were so much better than I. Thank you.
You've indeed set a very high bar. Next maiden speech.